Hi everyone, this is Nikki Rowland and today I have a layout for Lottie Loves Paper. I'm using the fabulous Bungalow Lane collection by Paige Evans and I'm focusing on this paper today. So this really pretty paper with all the squares on, the kind of like patchwork squares with different colours and patterns within each one. So the first thing I did was I kind of cut them all out. So I cut them into their squares of 9. Yeah, there's 9 of them. So I cut them into those squares. And then I wanted to create a layered effect. So the only problem with doing this is that then you cover up the other patterns underneath them. So I've started off with my 3 original squares. You can see on the layout, I'm going to arrange them something like that, with the photo poking out of the gap at the top. I'm planning to take the other squares and then cut out the middle sections, and then from the remaining squares, cut out the middle section of those as well. So yeah, I'm just kind of right now working out what I'm going to do. I'm obviously not working at a particularly fast rate, as nothing has changed on screen for the last few minutes. Well, that's what it feels like anyway. And I'm planning to put some mixed media behind my squares as well. So I'm going to show you how I do that. I'm using Distress Oxides today, but I will come back and show you that in a bit later on. Okay, so I'm glad I finally got a wriggle on. So you can see that I have now distressed the edges of those 3 squares. I've now cut out the middle. So I've basically, on the next set of squares, I've cut off a row off of each side of the square. Does that make sense? So I've now got the inner square as my second layer, and I've done that 3 times. And then on the third lot of squares, I've just cut out the middle section, so the little tiny bit in the middle. Well, with 1 row of colour around it. Yeah, there we go. I have now ended up with my 3 layers of each square, and I'm going to distress the edges of all of those and then stick them all together, and I'm going to stitch them on the sewing machine as well. Okay, so here they are all layered up, and they are all distressed and stuck on top of each other, and they're really like, I've got all the sides pushed up as well so that they are nice and dimensional. Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out if I can put my background, my layout. Oh, here we go. They're all stitched now as well, so that's what I'm trying to show you there. So I want to put my my layout onto a background. Now I have this piece of paper left over from a mini book that I've been making, and I have cut bits out from the middle, but I've kept the 12 by 12 edge intact. I do that quite a lot so that I can stretch my papers, and I'm going to use that as my border. Now I'm going to end up with some gaps, but I'm going to back it so it will be fine. So I've just trimmed my white cardstock down. It's about 11.5 or 11.25 inches square. Distressed the edges of that as well, and then stuck it into the middle over the top of that that piece of paper with all those holes in it. Distressing the edges as well, and unfortunately by doing this or folding them up a bit, I end up with a few gaps. I'm just going to take out some more of the paper there from the background, and the reason for that is because when I try to put that in my page protectors, that's all going to get caught. So by just trimming some of it out, I'm also going to tape it down with just regular sellotape as well. That will solve that problem. I'm also using those inner pieces to patch the slight gaps that I've got where my cut files went too close to the edge of the paper. And anyway, you wouldn't, by looking at the front of the layout now, you would not know that it's got holes in it and has had to be patched. Definitely don't discount a piece of paper just because it's a bit holy. Okay, so I have marked where my squares are going to sit and where my photo is going to go, and I've grabbed some Distress Oxide inks, and I'm going to apply some colour over the background. These are not my inks. I'm borrowing them from a friend, so I'm kind of having some fun and experimenting. A couple of them are mine. Not the Worn Lipstick is not mine, but the Fossilized Amber is. And then these 2 I'm mixing together. I think are Chipped Sapphire and Evergreen Bough, and together they make a great teal colour that match the Bungalow Lane really, really well. So just now, once those colours were down, I then decided to add some white white paint splatters over the top of those coloured areas. So yeah, it looks really nice. I like the way the white shows up. Excuse me. I have a new white paint pen, and it's a bit rogue. It doesn't work very well, not as well as the original one anyway. So I've actually resorted to a paintbrush and flicked using the paintbrush instead of just shaking from the pen. So my aim here is just to create kind of like a glow, a subtle glow going around the outside of my squares. So I didn't want to have too much colour poking out or showing off, I didn't want to have a huge area of colour. I was just trying to create a glow around the squares, and I was trying to stick with the similar colours to those around those edges. So I'm liking how it's looking. You can see that I have achieved that glow, which is pretty good. I'm happy about that. I've tucked my photo at the top there with some of the Speciality acetate, which is beautiful. And I've got another photo bottom left that I've also backed with a small amount of the Speciality acetate. And I'm now just going through all my Bungalow Lane pieces and working out what embellishments I can use. I have moved on a bit now. I lost a bit of the footage, sorry about that, but I've moved on a bit. You can see I've got my photos in place. They're stuck in place. I've added a chipboard frame behind the lower photo. I've also added a few pieces of embellishments, a few bits of ephemera here and there. So I've added some leaves. I've got some die-cut flowers. I've got some of the epoxy stickers. I've got a couple of bramble fox bits. So a few of the autumn leaves, really, really pretty. And the acorns, lovely. Over on the left, I've got one of those kind of corrugated or crepe paper leaves. They're really lovely. I love those from this collection. And then I've added a few cut-out semicircles from that paper with all the semicircles on. I've used most of that already on a different layout, but I had a few rows left over. So I've just chopped that up and I've put some on that top left square and the bottom square as well around the edges and sewn through those two. For my title, I'm using the Bungalow Lane alphabet thickers and also the thickers with all the phrases on. I've pulled out the word hello. I really liked the title Hello London because that's obviously where they are. But the hello didn't look right against those squares because it was going over lots of patterns. So I'm going to deal with that in a minute and stick that onto some white card and trim around it, and then that makes things look a lot better, a lot clearer. It shows up much better. So just a couple of labels over on the right hand side. I've got Make Happiness and Love What You Do. Now I'm doing my title, so I've just stuck that onto a piece of white cardstock, and I'm just going to trim around that title, and then I can add that back onto my layout, and that just makes all the difference. It makes it show up so much better with that white border around it than if it was just directly onto the pattern paper, because there are lots of things going on this layout. I have different patterns because of the different patterns in the squares. I also have the mixed media and the splatters, so there's quite a lot going on. So by putting it onto a piece of white, it just made it stand out much, much better. So I'm really pleased that I did that. And then I'm going to stitch through both of those words as well on my sewing machine. So I'll do that a bit later on, or maybe I do it now. Yes, I've done it now. And I've written my journaling in as well. And then the final thing I want to do is just to add a few more splatters of white paint. I wanted the white paint to appear over the patterned papers on the squares in particular. So rather than around the outside of them like I would normally do, or around my embellishments, I wanted them on the pattern paper squares because the pattern papers are so busy. Those squares are very, very busy. So this layout ended up a bit busier than what I was expecting. That seems to be happening a lot lately. But I do like how it turned out. I love incorporating lots of colours, so it's nice to have lots of colours, and I've got my 2 photos on there as well. And yeah, it's looking okay. So I say a little busier than what I was originally aiming for, but I like it just the same. So another memory documented. Okay, so here are a couple of close-ups. Yeah, don't forget to check out Bungalow Lane in the Lottie Loves Paper shop. That was Nikki Rowland for Lottie Loves Paper.